nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Acknowledgement certificate of posting.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Second motion by Munzer, second by Medina. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carries. Thank you. We're going to move certificate of presentations and recognitions. First one we have is actually there are three certificates. We have one for Jeff Collard, Dan DeVries, and Catherine Hughes. Is there a motion to approve all three?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carries. First one, can I have Jeff Collard up to the podium, please? Supervisor Medina. And then Supervisor Barrios, please come up to the podium. Oh, former. Sorry about that, Mark.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. Jeff, it is my privilege and honor to present you this certificate of recognition. My planning commissioner, I had the pleasure of appointing him in 2009 as a planning commissioner, and he served for 8 years as long as I did, alongside me. And we appreciate you, Jeff, for the 8 years of outstanding, dedicated service to the county of San Benito. Thank you so much. It hasn't gone unnoticed that you put in a lot of time along with all the other planning commissioners. And I know many a times you'd work late, wouldn't even have time to go home for dinner or change, and you would still make it to your planning commission meetings. So your dedication has been exceptional. You saw us through a lot of really big projects, important projects. You also helped us with a lot of ordinances, a lot of political ordinances that you were there for us. So we want to thank you for that, and I want you to know how much I appreciate you as my commissioner and as my friend. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, former Supervisor Barrios and Supervisor Medina. Next item is Dan DeVries. Can you please come to the podium? Supervisor Patello.
Thank you. Well, Dan, this is kind of a bittersweet moment for me. And Dan has been my planning commissioner from 2004 when I was elected, and he served faithfully. You know, it's being a planning commissioner is probably the toughest job, I think, maybe barring being a supervisor in the county. You have to kind of clean up all the ordinances before it comes before us, take a lot of criticism, and try to make things work. And one of the things I liked about Dan right from the start, and the reason I selected him as my planning commissioner, is that I knew he would keep the interests of the county at heart and number one. And he did so, and now he's moving on to the San Juan City Council, and I expect great things from him in the city of San Juan Bautista. We worked together on the general plan and made some terrific provisions, I think, that protects our rural and agricultural heritage. We worked on housing together as far as trying to develop affordable housing for all of our citizens and our whole community. And the few minutes I have here, Dan, I can't even begin to express the gratitude that I have for you. But I know we'll be lifelong friends.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Buddy. Thank you.
You want to say a few words? Or?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Supervisor Patello and supervisors. Let me just say briefly that it has indeed been a pleasure working with you and for you for the last 12 years. As Supervisor Patello indicated, we've done a lot of good work during that time, a lot of big projects, as Supervisor Barrios mentioned. Solar Gen and the general plan, the Hillside Ordinance, I think was a nice piece of legislation that we got through. And as I mentioned to Director Barnes, I hope that this isn't goodbye forever. I wish very much and would be very honored to continue to help the county in any way I can in my role as a councilman for San Juan Bautista, but also in my role as a personal citizen as well. Otherwise, I wish you all the best of luck and see you around. Thank you.
Catherine, is she here? Oh, Supervisor Rivas, thank you for coming.
Good morning. How are you? Good to see you. Good morning to everybody. So certainly we're here as a board to recognize by presenting this a certificate of appreciation to Catherine. Is it Hugh? Huff. That's why I came up here to the clerk and said, how do you pronounce it? I don't know. Apparently we both didn't know. So thank you for your contribution and invaluable service to the workforce, the Development Board for 9 years. So I commend you for your service. It is very challenging for us as members of the board to appoint people to these types of boards, because usually after about a few months, they're calling us saying, this isn't a good fit for me. So thank you for your service.
Welcome.
And you're more than welcome to say a few words.
Thank you. I appreciate the award. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, fellow supervisors, for making those presentations. Next thing on the item will be public comments. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board on items of interest not appearing on today's agenda. No action will be taken unless provided by Government Code Section 54954-2. Any speaker cards?
Marty Richmond. Good morning, this lovely January day. It's not raining. Marty Richmond from Hollister. First, before I get to my main subject, just a short thank you to all the folks in emergency services who helped out people who live in the county that were impacted by the terrible flooding that has occurred in some areas. And so I had a short interface with some
project information related to 2 routes in particular in AMBAG's jurisdiction. And one of them has to do with San Diego County, which is State Route Highway 25. And I believe what happened is they made the amendment to reflect that we've incorporated it back onto the constrained list. Is that correct? I always get confused with constrained, unconstrained. But they made sure that in this regional plan that it reflects what we've done at the local level. So that's the update from AMBAG for this past month. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Rivas. Supervisor Patello?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everyone. This past week, I attended a RCRC meeting, and Chairman De La Cruz attended the meeting. I thank him for taking the time in his busy schedule to attend that meeting. It kind of gives him a flavor of the hardships that I go through going to Sacramento. And and this trip was really no change from that, as we received a preliminary report of the governor's budget that the CEO briefly mentioned. And I don't get too excited about the governor's budget until about April, but one of the things that is pretty apparent what's end up happening is that the Williamson Act is be funded only $1,000, so we're not getting subvention funds again. And RCRC is trying to work on trying to structurally change how we approach those contracts and funding back to the counties. The other item that is of real serious note and to this community, the IHSS program, there's a coordinated care initiative that's be eliminated. And what that means is that more of the costs for IHSS is to be shifted back to the counties. I know some of the supervisors here have had meetings with SEIU in recent weeks. I know they're anxious to try to improve wages and benefits for their people that they represent in IHSS. I think the chances of that are small and nil, probably nil. We hoped we could keep the program at its status quo for the time being, and the problem is not here. The problem is in Sacramento, and I hope they get that message. The governor is calling on the legislature to try to add $4.2 billion annually to improve maintenance of highways and local roads. That's something I have talked about for the last 3 years, I think, locally, and I don't think that goes quite far enough. It really needs to be what the legislature is working on, which has the right numbers, AB 1 by Frazier and SB 1 by Bill, and that calls for about $6.5 billion in additional funding for our roads. And anybody who's traveled anywhere by road can see that we're in very serious critical need. I mean, it's you talk to people, travel out of state, California roads are the worst roads in the country. And this needs to be addressed. It should have been addressed 3 years ago. This is the third year that this legislation has been put out in front in Sacramento, and hopefully this year there's success. And last, we had a COG meeting. Chairman De La Cruz and I attended, and there's be a bus stop improvement at Anzar High School, which I'm very happy about in District 2. And there was continued work on the work plan for a local transportation tax. I think our director at Council of Governments is doing a fine job in putting that together. I kind of cringe to go back to a ballot measure to ask the taxpayers for more help, but we have to do something as well locally to address this road problem. That's all I have right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Patello. Supervisor Munzer?
None.
Supervisor Medina?
None at this time.
Thank you. First thing I want to do is really thank our staff for doing a good job, especially during this last couple of weeks, and also our administration staff for actually given us the tools that we need. I'll give you a perfect example. This morning, my computer wasn't working, and calling Louis Ray, and right away they have their staff zipping on and getting our computers, our information update. We really do appreciate that. Thank you, Ray. Really do. The other item is, I attended the Chispa event in which about 1,100 families will apply for just measly, what is it, Marty, 40 apartments? 36. 46. Somewhere in those numbers. And I had the fortune of verifying that list, the lottery list, because every family was given a number, and there'll be calls and letters sent out to these lucky families, I guess I can say that. And let me tell you, 1,100 families applying for just 36 units. There's a crisis in our community because there's still a lot of families that live in garages. You have 2 families that live in one home, and it's just getting worse. Every unit that we built in this community goes to a family who can afford a $700,000 unit, and I know a lot of our local residents ain't buying those new homes. So there is a crisis that we have out there in the community. Another item, I'm so glad that Ray and our staff attended the Stepping Up function, because I went to a seminar last year, and I went to the Stepping Up seminar, and I got a lot of information. I brought it back, and I told Ray, look, Ray, this is something that we should look into, and I really want to give our DA, our sheriff, and our probation department, and Ray, for taking that leadership and taking advantage of these opportunities that could actually provide wraparound services to our inmates in our community and families too. And it's a good program, and I hope it comes forward, and I hope it comes to the Board of Supervisors sometime in the near future. Thank you, Ray, for that. And I also attended the COG meeting, and Supervisor Batella was correct. We're going to need the public support on another sales tax. I, for one, said at one time I would not support another sales tax that requires 2/3 votes. But I think driving out in the community, we owe it to the public another opportunity, and I hope we can bring this and deliver this another sales tax, a road tax, in the next couple of years. And then I also attended the RCRC conference, and all I got to say is I concur what you said, Supervisor Batella. Thank you. All right, let's move on. Consent agenda. Any supervisor wish to pull any item out of consent? Supervisor Batella?
Yeah, 14 and 20.
14 and 20. Supervisor Munzer?
None.
Supervisor Rivas?
None from me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Medina? No. Anyone from the public? None? Ray? None? What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval of the remainder of the consent calendar.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 14, Supervisor Patello.
Well, to me, I can understand having reliable vehicles. We need vehicles that is safe for the people that we're trying to serve, as well as for our employees. But I think a pickup is the wrong type of vehicle for the Department of Health and Human Services. I think we could go with a sedan, and it would be at a less cost. Every dollar that we spend on a vehicle is one less dollar that we could put towards staffing and services, and that's just kind of how I feel. I think it's the wrong vehicle. I think it's somebody in the department that wants to drive a pickup rather than a car.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sorry. That's just how I feel about it.
The reason why we have come forward and asked for a pickup is to transport equipment and, things that we need, to do events in the community, such as the immunization clinics, such as the healthy lunches at the schools, such as the events that we do at the farmers market, and we just have a need to be able to have something that will provide us with that ability to get to those events and do a good job.
And from what I read in the staff report, we haven't had a pickup in the past, and we've been doing just fine. We've had a van, and I don't know. I rather go the other way, but I'm just one person. And if there is that much equipment and stuff, I could see on a rare occasion, perhaps we could borrow a pickup from Public Works. They got a lot of pickups too, relatively brand new. I just feel that we've done well without it, and maybe cut down on tables and chairs. I have no idea.
Okay. That is our background on it, and however the board votes, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments from fellow supervisors? None? Anyone from the public? Okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to oppose this staff recommendation.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against?
No.
No.
Motion fails 2-3. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval of staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry. Can I get it again? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
No. Motion carries 3-2. Okay. Number 20, Supervisor Botello.
Yes, thank you. I think we have the cart before the horse in this item. So,
Well said.
yeah. Anyhow, what we have is a pretty expensive horse trailer, pretty expensive, I think. And I know it that we had some large animal rescues, for example, this past week, at a couple of different occasions, and I'm sure that animals were transported. I'm not saying that we don't need a horse trailer or a livestock trailer, I'll call it, but I think we need to, before we go into this path, have a better coordinated program with the volunteers of the equestrian rescue group, with animal control, coordinated with OES and so forth, rather than buying a trailer that I have serious questions whether or not animal control even has a vehicle that could pull it. And then we're parking in their lot, and I don't quite, maybe that could be the first question. Do they even have a vehicle that could pull this trailer?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And I'm going to just vote against it, because I don't think we have a program with the volunteers that are part of this equestrian rescue, and it needs just to be better coordinated. That's what I would be spending money on, is the program first, and then worry about the equipment as we progress in that.
Right. So let me give a little background and I think address some of your concerns. This was a request that came from the Hollister Police Department on behalf of their animal control division. It was submitted to the Gang of Five to utilize Homeland Security grant funds, and approved by the Gang of Five. They do have a vehicle. They do have the capacity to utilize this trailer.
Excuse me, Kevin, can you explain to the public the Gang of Five?
Sure. Sorry. So every year, the Office of Emergency Services is awarded a set amount from the California Office of Emergency Services, which is passing the money through from the Department of Homeland Security. So last year, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $133,000. The Gang of Five consists of city police chief, county sheriff, city fire chief, county fire chief, and the county health officer. So this group, this body of five, receives proposals from various public safety departments in the county and vets the proposals and decides on the best way to spend the money. There has to be a nexus to terrorism, to security, and so during the last fiscal year, the Hollister Police Department submitted the request for this trailer. Like I said, it was approved by the Gang of Five, or the Body of Five. They do have the capacity to tow it, and Animal Control has said that they can manage the trailer and utilize it. And they probably would have utilized it over the last week and a half. Most of the trailers that were used previously were private trailers or those owned by a couple select volunteers. So this way, the Animal Control would have their own in case volunteers were not needed, or the trailer could be used by a volunteer group as we continue to build that volunteer group up.
Okay. You just about got me sold. Just about have me sold. Another question I have. I see that the sale is at 101 Livestock Trailer Sales, which is a great place. I bought a trailer there myself last month. Did you go out for any sort of bids, or just went out to the 101 Livestock?
So we went by the recommendation from Animal Control, the specs that they were looking for this trailer, and from what they were able to identify, there was only 2 vendors in the state of California. One being 101, one being I don't know where, somewhere else, I believe in Southern California. 101 was not only cheaper, but closer, logistically, no shipping, all that. So it wasn't an official, RFP or, process, but we did get quotes from the only 2.
Well, you demonstrated that you did some research. That's good. Yeah. And last question I have is about 6, maybe 8 months ago, we talked about radios and the lack of and having blind spots out in the unincorporated areas. I think there's a couple down in South County, and I know there's a couple in the west part of the county. Have we resolved that?
I don't believe it's been resolved, but it's in the works. I believe the board will see an item on the next agenda for approval to move forward with that project, also using this Homeland Security grant funds. I think it's in the neighborhood of $40,000 or $50,000. And once we get that approval, that should hopefully help alleviate some of those gaps in coverage.
Yeah, because I know this board has expressed that needs to be resolved. And I think it's for officer and public safety, and as long as that's being resolved, with that you have the money and it's getting done. I just didn't want to get ahead of it and spend $20,000 on a horse trailer when we should spend that money on fixing our radio program.
Right. And I believe the only reason this one's coming up first is because there's been a lot more work in terms of coming up with a plan of how they're going to do it, because they're moving some of the equipment to the sheriff's office at 2301 that's currently on the old sheriff's building, as well as building the capacity. So that's the only delay. But I know Captain LaMonica was working on it, and so I believe you'll see it on the next board meeting, if not the following.
Okay. And lastly, maybe the Gang of Five could talk about this with Animal Control. I understand they operate on cell phones. I think they should be on a radio. I think that's part of the issues that we've had with Animal Control as far as tracking the calls and duration and the costs. And it's good to be able to communicate with all agencies on an emergency like we had out in Lover's Lane. But thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Supervisor Patel. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the last item that was pulled, the pickup truck for Health and Human Services, I was able to contact Jim Riding-Sword and had my questions answered, because I had some of the same concerns that Supervisor Patello had about that item. This item I couldn't see bothering Kevin over the weekend. I think he had a little bit more important things that he was worried about than a horse trailer. But I, too, expressed some of the concerns of Supervisor Patello over this item. So I'm glad it's been pulled. One thing that I would like to maybe express. I know the Game of Five it's their money; they take a vote on it. But I know in intergovernment we are kind of discussing the whole animal control issues with the city of Hollister and the county. I believe I don't remember if it was this meeting, our board meeting, or if it was the intergovernment. I didn't even realize that animal control was dealing with large animals. So my recommendation would be to continue this item, let it be discussed at intergovernment a little bit more, and so that we can understand what the thought is behind it. And then we can maybe hear at that meeting how the situation over the last couple of weeks in Lover's Lane was dealt with, and how this would benefit another such event on that proportion. So my recommendation would be to continue this item. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Listening to my fellow supervisor Munzer's, it's not their money. That's my understanding. It's actually they could decide to make recommendations, and the Board of Supervisors can approve or deny their request. Correct, Kevin?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, the money is awarded to the county, and the Gang of Five is who prioritizes and picks projects.
But the
it's
Board of
still-
Supervisors still have to give the final say, and if the board does not approve it, that money is not allocated.
That is correct.
Thank you. Any other questions, fellow supervisors? None? Thank you. I'll go up to the public. Anyone from the public? Chief?
Thank you, Board and Chair. So this past 2 weeks has been pretty troubling and a lot of work for animal control and all of our county workers. We did 133 animal rescues on Lover's Lane. 83 of those are at the City of Hollister shelter, and 50 are at the fairgrounds right now because they're large animals. We've dealt with large animal rescues for as long as we've had animal control here in the county. And the thought with having a horse trailer or a large trailer would be that if we needed to rapidly deploy, we could do that prior to even volunteers being called out. So for us, it's about the efficiency of deploying those needed services as quickly as possible and using the appropriate funding through the Homeland Security. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions of the Chief? None? Thank you, Chief. DA Candace, please.
I will be talking under two hats. One, as DA, animal control does not just watch over puppy dogs and kitty cats. They handle the large animals too. To rely on our volunteers, our volunteers are great, but sometimes they're not available. Sometimes they cannot get to their equipment, etc. Animal control does have the need, and we do get cases criminally with large animals. Now on the personal side, as a rancher and experiencing what we have just experienced, the call out that came, the rescues that came, the time frame it took for these volunteers to go home, get their vehicles, bring them in, etc., could be shortened very much by animal control having this stock trailer. And I would encourage you to approve it.
Thank you. Hold on, Candace.
Sorry.
Supervisor Munzer.
So again, Candace, thank you, and thank you for bringing out the criminal cases involving large animals. So how do you know how that has been handled in the past when a animal needed to be moved under a criminal?
I'm not positive. My belief is, and Chief could back me up on this or correct me, but I believe Julie Carrero would go home, get her personal trailer, so she'd have to leave animal control, go home, get her personal trailer, load the animal up, and take it, and usually they would be going to 101 Livestock.
And how many times a year are we dealing with criminal cases?
It varies. Every
3
once in a while, you
or
get a
4, or-
rash. I really can't say.
Okay,
Last
all right.
year, Chief, probably yeah, and some pretty outrageous ones.
I didn't hear the chief.
He said about a dozen.
Doesn't? Okay, all right.
It
Then that-
varies.
Okay, that's good to know.
Supervisor Bettina?
One question. Now, someone using their personal trailer, what type of liability does that cause for the county?
You would have to ask county council, but I would assume there is liability with it.
Would hope that we would have some insurance requirements in place.
And do we have that?
I have no idea at the moment. You might remember that animal control and the people staffing it are the city of Hollister, so it would come through we just simply contract with them. So whatever insurance requirements there are would be through the city of Hollister.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Good morning, Marty Richmond again. I hope our anti-gang task force is taking on this gang of five. We're not.
The anti-gang task force?
Don't we have an anti-gang committee, right? We wouldn't want the gang of five to be running amok here. I appreciate Supervisor Medina's question. I think it indicates the problem, which is you're operating as a government agency. When people have an emergency, they operate as people. They don't worry about whether or not they have insurance or not. They're going to go home, get their own trailer. They're not going to charge the county, and they're not going to charge the city for the wear and tear, and they're going to take their chances and go out and rescue the animal. I think that a lot of that goes on here in San Benito County. I don't think the government agencies appreciate it enough. I know I've talked to a lot of people in both the city and the county governments. I don't want to be squealing on them, who, when they're in a bind, wind up pulling out their personal credit card because they need something to help the county or help the city, and they wind up pulling out their personal credit card and putting it on there. Even if they get the money back, that's not the issue. The issue is that's no way to run a railroad. So we have to, I think it's important, when it comes to emergencies, you just don't know. The truth of the matter is, a big emergency like Lover's Lane, you're probably going to be able to get people to donate use of their trailers. But 3 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday, when it hasn't been raining, and there's a criminal action going on, and there's a large animal involved, you're not going to find somebody to do that. So you need to have the trailer. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. As the old saying goes, when it comes to emergency services, put the bandages and the emergency food in your closet and hope you never use it. Don't worry about what it costs. And in this case, I think, even though we probably won't use it very much, maybe 10 times a year, in my opinion, it's a lot better investment than a pickup truck for taking stuff on Wednesdays down to the middle of Hollister to set it up. So I encourage you to, I hate to spend the money, believe me, but I encourage you to support this. Thank you for your time.
Hold on, Marty. Supervisor Botello.
Oh, no, I have my comments after public comment.
Thank you, Marty.
Okay, because I have more jokes.
There's a lot of cliches in this.
You started it.
I know.
Anyone else in the public? Ann?
Good morning. Might be brief. The beginning of the conversation began with the Gang of Five and who was appointed. If the Gang of Five is structured as it is, has recommendations brought to it, and picks something, I'm not understanding what the debate is with the Board of Supervisors, respectfully. It seems to me this should have been on the consent agenda, so as a point of government, I'd like to, and a citizen would like to say, why are we questioning the Gang of Five? Thanks.
Thank you. I'll have a response to that at the end of the closed session. Anyone else from the public?
Valerie Egan. I'm rural San Juan Bautista. And a trailer does not take a lot of maintenance. There is no motor. It can sit there and wait for need. It's something once invested in is going to last a long time. So it's an investment that's wise. And what was said by our district attorney is that, it's when you need it, you need it. And at this point, I think the condition of the county shows that we should have something in place. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. All right, anyone else? Okay, I'll close it. Supervisor Botello?
Okay, I'm happy I pulled this off of consent. It was on consent. And the reason I pulled it off was that, I wasn't sure if the animal control had the ability to pull a trailer. Next meeting will be a vehicle, and where does that money come from? 2, I needed to know if we did the proper level of research as far as the cost of the trailer, and that was very well answered by the OES director. And 3 is priority. We've talked about dead areas in the county with radios, and not having that resolved up to this point is, in my opinion, a concern for our officers and the public. As long as those 3 things were being met, it satisfied me where I could vote on this item. I still would like, we have quite a few public safety people here this morning, that the search and rescue group, I think from the sheriff's office, did an outstanding job this past week because they're coordinated and organized. I think it's very important, whether it's through the fire department or through the sheriff's office or animal control, to have a little bit better coordination with the volunteers that are out there, and we have some fine people that know what they're doing with large animal rescues. It's not just somebody who likes a horse to work with emergency services, and that program has to be beefed up a little bit, because this is not the last emergency in our county. So that's the point I wanted to make today. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Botello. Supervisor Rivas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly I appreciate the scrutiny to agenda items. Starting my 7th year on the board, so I've seen crazier things. The scrutiny of pencils and pens. So I certainly appreciate the scrutiny, but having this item be on our consent agenda, I certainly appreciate and I value the opinions and expertise of our public safety experts. I'm not a public safety expert, so I assume that this is on the agenda to serve a need that we have in this community. And certainly having gone through these floods and having seen the pictures and having myself gone out there to see the damage, certainly having a trailer, as Mr. Richmond had noted, at 3 in the morning, address the need that we have. And so I absolutely support this agenda item, and we'll move it forward. So thank you for staff and my colleagues.
Thank you, Supervisor Rivas. Before I ask the board for direction, I just want to respond to some of the members of the public. It is our responsibility to question and ask questions regardless of how the funds are coming to this community. We are ultimately responsible to the taxpayers, and that is you. We're here for your best interest. We're here to ask questions, regardless if it's an agenda item. If a supervisor wishes to pull an item out, it is within his or her right to pull that item and ask for discussion. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion for staff recommendation on.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, item number, we'll go regular agenda item number 28. Kevin?
All right, so hello again. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to prepare anything really glamorous with any visuals for you, but I can give you an update on what's been going down at the Lovers Lane area and San Felipe Shore Road. As the board's aware from the last meeting, we had significant flooding 2 Wednesdays ago, where the fire department, San Jose Fire Department, CAL FIRE, needed to rescue people from their houses using boats and other means. But we had 2 more rounds of flooding since then, once on Friday and again on Sunday, and it's still extremely wet down there right now. First, good news is the governor of the state of California proclaimed a state of emergency for our county and I believe all 58 counties in the state yesterday, opening funding to assist counties and local jurisdictions in recovering from this disaster. So that's great news. The second and third round of flooding certainly exacerbated a lot of the damages that we suffered from the first one. Roads and bridges are compromised and will require a significant amount of repair in the tune of millions. I was just notified by RMA Director Brent Barnes yesterday that the bridge on San Felipe Road, just about a mile south of Shore Road, is potentially compromised to the point where the entire bridge needs to be replaced, and we've restricted access to the bridge only to local residents and only to small vehicles. A lot of what caused this flooding was just a tremendous amount of rain, both here and up in the Pacheco Pass area. The Pacheco Reservoir, which is several miles up 152, was spilling over the spillway at about 2 to 3 feet over the spillway, which contributed to all this flooding. Additionally, there was a levee break about a quarter mile east of the Lover's Lane Bridge, which caused the significant flooding to the north of the creek. We have a team out doing damage assessments once again today. To this date, we have four red tagged structures, and we're continuing to evaluate the total cost of the damages. We also have some representatives from the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, if you have any questions for them. But we'd like to thank all of our partners at this time for a tremendous team effort in responding to these flooding events. We issued reverse 911s, we received 911 calls, and have responded to all of the concerns, all of the concerns we've received from the public. Tomorrow, Supervisor Medina and myself will be giving Congressman Jimmy Panetta a tour of the area. And like I said, we're just gathering information. Now that we've gotten the gubernatorial proclamation, a lot of the hard work starts in terms of documentation, figuring out costs, RFP processes, everything that comes with fixing all the damages. I'd also like to thank the residents of the area. I was amazed by the resiliency and the whole community effort of that area. People watching each other, taking care of each other, and being vocal about how we as the county can help them. And I appreciate their patience through this difficult time, and them helping each other and helping us to help all the affected residents. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any specific questions. I'm hoping to come back and bring some footage so the board can see some of the damages, but last night was my first night of good sleep. So just didn't have time to put something together, so I apologize for that.
Thank you, Kevin. Supervisor Medina.
Well, just before I arrived here, I received a phone call from Fish and Game, and I will be speaking with them after this meeting to see what they can do to help us out, especially come springtime, if we can get into those rivers and clear them out. The individual I spoke to said he'd have someone come down here and look around anything that we need to do. He also said if there is any type of a emergency thing we need to do now, that we can call him and we can work on that also. My understanding right now, you can correct me if I'm not correct there, Kevin, is the levee that broke, we can't get back there to fix it at this point in time because it is too muddy, too wet, so we're going to have to wait until it dries out, correct?
That's correct. The access is extremely difficult. There's no road that goes directly to it, so essentially we'd need to build a road at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All I got to say, thank God, because we were going to send Anthony, our pit bull, over that group. Thank you. Supervisor Rivas?
Yes, I have a couple questions. And again, I want to thank staff and Kevin for your diligence out there and everything that you guys have done. And so I know you mentioned opening this funding stream. And so maybe you can educate me and the public. How does emergency cleanup assistance work? And what is the process, timeline, and expense, if any, to the county and to taxpayers?
So that's a difficult question. And at this time, we're still gathering information on what exactly the governor has made available. We just got notified yesterday at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. But traditionally, with a gubernatorial proclamation where he makes available funding through the California Disaster Assistance Act, or CDAA, there's a 25% local match. So the state will put in 75% and the locals must put in 25%. However, that's not necessarily a cash match. We were fortunate that we had a lot of volunteer hours that can be used as a match. Okay. A lot of the staff time we've put into this disaster can be used as a match to cover that 25%. What that 25% is, I don't know. We'll have to get out there once a lot of the water's gone so we can see what the damage is. But this event isn't just limited to the Lover's Lane, San Felipe area. There was widespread impacts to the entire county. Aromas had several mudslides, down trees. The Public Works Road Department did an amazing job. I mean, they were out all night, some nights, clearing roads, and all of that can go towards that 20% match, or we can request reimbursement through CDAA. So it's just all kind of a balancing act of figuring out what we submit for, what the match is, and there's even a possibility of the state waiving the match for some counties, and we can pursue that option as well.
Okay. And then, Mr. Chair, my second question is, I know Supervisor Medina had mentioned Fish and Game, and so do we have a plan or like a strategy moving forward to address the Pacheco Creek, the cleanup effort? I know that in a discussion you and I had, you alluded to the fact that, we have a problem between ownership of the creek, a public-private issue between ownership of the creek. And so how do we move forward and mitigate those, the ownership issue?
At this point, the plan is to create a plan. We haven't really had too much time to figure out the details on that yet. But we are working with the Cal OES and Fish and Game to figure out how we can get in there. We've had a couple preliminary meetings with the Department of Water Resources, but that private property issue is definitely concerning. And the other piece of it is that where the levee failed was just kind of if it didn't fail there, it was going to fail somewhere else, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. So if we fix that breach, it may just cause a breach further down or upstream, and that's something we have to look at as well. And the cost, like I said, is unknown at this time, but that's why we're going to call in our state experts. That's why we're very fortunate the governor made these resources available to us so we can start having these conversations and start getting some work done to mitigate the impacts of this disaster.
Thank you, Captain. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Rivas. Supervisor Botello?
Yes, I think it's imperative right now that we figure out what the repair is going to be. In 1997, the major flooding occurred in March, and we're only halfway through the rainy season. We have to get in there this week, and when we declared our local emergency, that gave us a little bit of rights to go across private property, from my understanding. That's why we did this. I think private property owners out there, myself included, would welcome any sort of help to repair the damage to the levees. And now that we have the governor's office that is on board, I guess, with the disaster, which I certainly want to thank their representative for being here today, and maybe they'll answer a few questions on how that funding and how quickly it's be available to fund not just a cleanup. We have still an ongoing disaster going on without a levee, and it's not that much rain that we've had that caused major problems. So I think it's imperative that we develop that plan quickly. The RFP process, this is not a summer job. This is a job for right now, and an evaluation of the rest of the levee, because you're right, it will break somewhere else. And I've seen it there a couple of times already, and that's where Fish and Game comes in. The lack of channel maintenance is the problem. And in 10 years from now, it's a plug up again if we don't have some sort of maintenance program there. And that's what the Pacheco Flood District was created to help that area out with. So I think we need to have reports through Supervisor Medina to the rest of the board as how we're progressing with the repair of those levees while the sun is out for the next week or so, and get in there and fix it. Thank you.
Supervisor Munzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Kevin, I want to thank you and for all your hard work, keeping us informed of what was going on. I want to thank all the staff, the volunteers. I know we were dickering over whether to buy a horse trailer or not, stock trailer, whatever you want to call it, but that's another issue. But we certainly appreciate all the time, effort, and hard work that everybody put into it. I want to just commend the residents out there. I went through it. I went through it in 97. I know what it's like. We need not only to get the state behind us, but hopefully this declaration by the governor will kick in the federal FEMA process also. Mm-hmm. We need that kind of help. And I would say not only do we need to deal with the cleanup of Pacheco Creek, but all of our waterways in the county needs to be cleaned up. Years ago, the property owners took on the responsibility of keeping those waterways clear. Unfortunately, Fish and Game has made it very difficult for private owners to do that. And I think all of our waterways are at risk of the same thing happening. This year, the heavy rain came through, as you said, Pacheco Pass area, the Guasabi area, and it affected the Pacheco Creek. What I experienced, it was the Tres Venus Creek got the bulk of the rains. But again, we need the regulations to be, loosened a little bit. And hopefully this state of emergency of the county will cover the whole county, and maybe some of our other property owners will be able to get in there and deal with the other waterways also, with Fish and Game's blessing. We need to work with Fish and Game, I understand that, but again, Fish and Game needs to be able to work with us and make sure that we don't have another issue either later this year, later this rain season, or the next rainy season. Because the property owners will get in there, they will maintain their property if they're allowed to. And I say to the residents, it's a long process dealing with the state and the feds if we get the feds' help, but hang in there, work with them, and it'll be beneficial to them to go through the process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, open up to the public. Anyone from the public?
Sure. My name is Wayne Norton, and I live in Aromas. And I didn't come to the meeting today to talk about this, but as wearing my hat as a member of the board of directors of the Aromas Water District, this is an important issue throughout the county, and I appreciate Mr. O'Neill mentioning Aromas and some of the issues that we have in Aromas. I also want to say that one of the things I really love about living in this county is the way people step up when there's a need. The folks in Lover's Lane area, I have some friends that live out there. I am heartened by their spirit of community and joining together and helping each other and working to try to find the positive in this situation. The question I have actually is, with the state money and perhaps with the federal disaster, is there the possibility to do some preventative work? Because we all can probably think of some places that weren't necessarily disasters now, but are going to be if we don't do something. Certainly in our district, Supervisor Botello, we could probably fill a map with places that are potential disasters. So I hope that if it's possible, that we also do some planning about trying to find vulnerabilities and see if we can prevent some future disasters too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else from the public? Okay, I'll close it.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I wanted to invite our RMA director up to give a quick, brief report on the roads and on the bridges.
Yes, I just want to share with my fellow supervisors, and this is something that was actually brought by Supervisor Munzer, that because, Louis, you are the face of San Benito County on TV, it's ice cream on you next time.
Before Brent gives his report, I discussed this, and Mr. Botello never said chocolate or vanilla.
Okay. Thank you, Brent.
I'd say Rocky Road, but that'd be a really bad pun. Thank you.
Delete it all.
You tee them up, I'll hit them. Very briefly, I wanted to give the board a little bit more information on the bridge on San Felipe. It's a wood span bridge, three spans, and it was built in 1952. The water came up to the level, I don't know if it overtopped the deck of the bridge itself, but it came up to the level of the deck on the underside. So it's a wood structure, 3 trusses, a concrete deck overlay, and then an asphalt deck on top of that. It's quite old. The bridge appears to have been moving a little bit because of the water circulation, the high flow under there. So we're concerned about the structural integrity of it. First of all, it's old. Secondly, heavy loads and so on. In addition, there was water flow yesterday. Actually, it looked like an artesian well coming up out of the ground just to the east side of this bridge and creating some additional flow, some dynamics, hydraulic dynamics in the vicinity of the road there. So we're concerned a little bit about the road shoulder and the competency of the road itself. That may be either an artesian well, which I think is unlikely, or a drain pipe from one of the farm fields, but it's clearly directing water against the edge of the bridge. We're going to close the road temporarily, San Felipe Road, and put in a jersey barrier, I call it, a K-rail solution, and we'll be bringing the contract for that to the CIO, and perhaps as early as this afternoon that can be deployed so that we can create a safe situation for crossing that bridge. We are going to restrict it to light vehicles only, though. Yesterday when we were out there, a motor coach, a big bus, flew through about 70 miles an hour up that road. And I can't imagine that that's doing anything to help the bridge as that weight goes across. So there's pressure from underneath, and then there's pressure going across, and that will definitely destroy the bridge. Longer term, we intend to replace the bridge. It's about a $2 million project, but we believe that it's subject to a more detailed assessment. We believe that it's probably compromised and needs to be replaced. I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Questions? None.
Okay, thank you.
City Manager Bill.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Supervisors. On behalf of the City of Hollister, again, I just want to let everybody know, and I want to extend my hand to Ray. If you folks need anything at all, please just let us know. As Brent just mentioned, K-Rail, we have tons of K-Rail at the yard that we can have delivered to. We've kind of set up a temporary staging site for you folks out at the airport. Any equipment that you need, please just let Kevin or Ray know, or Kevin let Ray know, have Ray let me know, and we can get anything you folks need that we have as resources. We have a lot of material available too. If you would like to try to attempt to build temporary roads, any of that kind of stuff, just let us know what it is that you think you may need, and we can see if we can get it or get our hands on it immediately. So I appreciate the efforts that you guys have been going through the last couple of weeks, and I just want, again, we're here to help. Okay?
Thank you for your.
I think, Mr. Chairman, we'd be remiss to, in the partnerships that we do have with the fire, animal control, want to thank you for the effort that Hollister has given up to this point as well. So that should be noted publicly.
Anyone from City of San Juan Bautista here willing to volunteer any services? None?
They're asking for county services.
Thank you, Bill. Ray? That's it? Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, I know that all of us at one point have thanked staff and, our regional effort. I also want to, because she'll probably get mad at me if I don't recognize her, because she played a big role, was Assemblywoman Ana Caballero. I mean, she was constantly on the phone with me. She constantly was asking me, give me the phone numbers of the CIO, give me the phone numbers of this. I said, man, I don't work for you anymore. But she cares. She cares about this community and about this district. And so I really, I commend her hard work and her diligence. I know that she was daily in contact with the governor's office. We stressed to her. I know Kevin did. I know Ray did. I know I did. I know Mr. Medina did. We were constantly on the phone with Ana, asking her, or our assembly member constantly asking her for assistance and trying to let her know, because she wanted to know how much of a disaster we were facing here locally. Because San Diego County, unfortunately, we hadn't faced this kind of emergency since late 90s. And so, I certainly want to thank her very publicly, because I need people to understand. I want people to understand how involved she was. And so it's not very often you get a public servant that goes an extra mile. So, Ana, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's just a presentation. Thank you, Kevin.
If I may add one more thing, and Billy, excuse me, Billy just reminded me, we definitely need to thank City of Hollister Public Works. They came through for us and filled 2,000 sandbags for the residents of Lover's Lane and had them delivered to the airport. So I want to make sure we didn't forget that. I know Mike Chambliss is here, and I wanted to not forget him, because I believe all of them are gone. So they were put to good use in Lover's Lane and hopefully save some property. So, thank you.
Supervisor Munster?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kevin, is a representative from Fish and Game here?
They were not able to make it
They
today.
were not. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right. Okay, moving on.
Well, if there's something from the governor's office, I think I might have a couple of questions for them. If they want to get up and speak, or
So we have our outgoing Deputy Regional Administrator and our new Deputy Regional Administrator from Cal OES here, and let you guys talk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, and thank you for having us here today. Be happy to answer any questions, but to give you a message from our office, and it's something I think that's important for me to do as a representative of a governor's office, is to I have to manage expectations, and I have to say that within my region, which is California Mutual Aid Region 2, 16 counties along the coastal region from Del Norte County down to Monterey. 13 of my 16 counties have proclaimed emergencies during these winter storms events. Some of those counties actually began proclaiming back in December when their rain issues started up on the north coast, and we just received information from our director that the likelihood that funding for CDAA as well as Caltrans federal highway funding would be a potential option for them as they have collected their data, damage assessments, and so on throughout the north coast. One of the really important things as a message I have to pass on, and Kevin and I have spoken multiple times recently, as we coordinate these damage assessments with our counties within the coastal region, one of the very important messages we try to put out there is we have to try to track the damage assessment. We have to collect this data. We have to be able to show as an aggregate throughout our region as well as throughout the state what these storms are doing to us, so that the governor has some accurate information on the amount of actual damage that we're facing. And Kevin's been doing truly a champion job in getting us damage assessment information. And although those numbers, when Kevin says he has 4 residents red tagged, those are some of the big numbers we look at as far as a disaster when it comes for the governor to look at the overall picture in the state of California, how many homes were destroyed during the storm. Within Kevin getting that information in as 4, within the region initially, that was one of the numbers we were actually looking at as one of the first reported numbers of red tagged, destroyed homes within San Benito County. We clearly, when we push the message that we have 4 homes destroyed in an overall report to the state of California, that number may sound minimal, but as we start talking about the overall impacts to a community that has obviously a much smaller population than some of our other counties, and where a lot of our government officials live, we oftentimes realize that it may not be raining in Sacramento, but it's raining in our coastal region, and we're feeling the impacts of that. As the storms come in, our coordination calls and information we share with Kevin oftentimes is our National Weather Service partners giving us projected impacts of the weather that's going to be coming in, as well as the river levels that are currently in place. We know for days and days that we're going to be seeing this type of weather. We began moving state resources at the beginning of this storm, and when our staff ultimately was trying to handle the variety of counties, we began asking for assistance from southern regions, Southern California, because at that point the storm had not touched them yet. And so we actually got a resource deployed from the Los Angeles area up here to be in San Benito early on in the storm efforts, to be an agency representative for Cal OES to work with Kevin and start working on gathering the data we need to make our decisions. An important thing to think of as Kevin's out here collecting this damage assessment information, we need to ultimately look at the long-term potential funding options that are going to be made available or could be made available by our governor, and that is, again, the CDAA. That's not a guarantee, but that is definitely something that could be out there. Federal highway funding, a big one. When we have multiple counties with multiple roadway damages, we have the likelihood of seeing that if the process continues on. And then the Small Business Administration, SBA loans, oftentimes for some of our citizens if residents, a certain number of residents and or businesses are damaged. So there's a variety of different funding options that our recovery folks, look at when they come in and start talking to the different counties and collecting the IDE, initial damage assessment, as well as the PDA information from our county representatives. I'll answer any questions, hopefully, that you have. But I would like to say, late last night, I was on the phone with the director of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. That's unusual for me. A guy at my pay grade doesn't typically talk to directors, but I'm on the cell phone with the director of Fish and Wildlife saying, listen, we need a representative to be down here because the request was made by Kevin as a mission to have a representative for Fish and Wildlife to be here. I understand limitations within state agencies, and I understand that the area office that represents San Benito is actually out of Fresno, and getting a representative here this morning would have been difficult for them to do with their staffing issues that they have. However, he was very open to having coordinated phone conversations and offering his technical staff to you on an ongoing basis. Whatever you need to to get these processes and conversations started. A couple days ago, District 1 Supervisor Medina and I had that conversation about getting these representatives from the state agencies down here for you in those events where you truly need to have some questions answered. And I can't by any means speak for Department of Fish and Wildlife, but what I can say is if I'm getting phone calls from their director, they do have an ear to you, and they are interested in trying to be here to work with you and for you. All emergencies are local, and we know that as a state, and sometimes it may not appear that at our levels when we say as a region that we're dealing with so many things and moving resources. But when Kevin calls and we go back, a little ways, we have a very similar history and are both guys that came from a background in fire. And so we appreciate that public service, public safety response that needs to be coordinated. And of course, as we look at the area impacted, when we were out, I told Kevin this morning, I said, I appreciate looking at a guy, and I told my new replacement, Mr. Dave Cruz. Dave says, are we going to wear a suit to this morning? I said, no, we're not going to wear a suit because we're probably going to be tromping around out in some mud a little while later. And I looked at Kevin this morning in a suit, and I looked down at his dirty shoes, and I said, Kevin, I sure appreciate that you wore a suit because you make us kind of look a little underdressed, but thank you for throwing the mud on your shoes because now I understand, and we all understand how we operate out here. We're glad to be here, and we're glad to assist you with what we can. But again, so you understand, it's my responsibility, and I must manage your expectations to say, I'm not here with a pot of gold. What I am here to do is to try to get the data necessary to pass up the line to make sure that our state agencies understand the challenges you're facing. And as I sit through the board meeting and hear some of the different challenges that you face as a county. I came from, prior to my state service, I came from the county of Siskiyou. And much like you, I'm a very rural county. I was the emergency manager up there. And we had very similar conversations oftentimes when we had winter emergencies. Our boards sat together and had very, very similar conversations. I just want you to know we're familiar with, we understand, and we our thoughts and our prayers are with you and your county and your citizens when these horrible storms come through. It's 1997. I was sitting on a levee down in the Marysville Olivehurst area when the levee broke and wiped out a community down there. I thought that was going to be the end of all at that moment. And sometimes during the middle of these crises, that's how we feel, that this is bad. And the one thing I can say 10 years later, we're seeing it again, and in 10 years from now, we will see it again. You're right. So let's work with these state agencies. Let's see what we can do to get everybody coordinated through conversations and through agreements to do what's necessary to mitigate the future problems. Building the stronger levees, clearing the waterways, anything that's necessary, because I think every time we go through one of these, we tend to learn something about where are we from last time and where are we going to see ourselves in 10 years, because we'll do it again, folks. So, any questions?
Supervisor Patella?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Supervisor Medina wants to add anything. Or I do have a couple of questions or comments. Yeah, you get the personal tours, and that's good. Thank you very much for coming down. I think it means a lot to San Bernardino County that the governor's office is here this morning, and that they declared emergency. I think we all realize you didn't have your trunk full of gold, but there. A little bit, anything is going to help, and hopefully, the meeting that Supervisor Medina's I have with Congressman Panetta will help bring in FEMA to the state as well. Lovers Lane, Four Corners, Dunville is a community out there, and it's not large in numbers like you said, but it's large in San Benito County, and the means this county board to be able to really go in there and implement the solutions to fix that levee, because like I said, it's probably a rain again this year. It's clear skies right now, but as long as that levee has been breached, it's a take resources to fix it, and having your office involved means a lot as far as resources and funding. How should we approach this? Can we just go in there, like if we're able to get access this week, get a contractor, bring in county riprap, which we have some, and get the job done and not look back and then and deal with it? Is that how we should be approaching this emergency? Because it's an emergency as long as those levees are breached and even when the skies are clear.
You're a resilient community. You're a resilient county, and I hear that you have partners within your own county that are stepping up and truly doing what the mutual aid process is all about, what SIMS is all about. And although in this case the city's stepping up and offering to assist the county, work together. You're one big partnership in this case. Get those resources in place. Start those repair processes. Do what you can do. Understand the limitations. I clearly do as you get into these areas that may be impassable. Maybe there are. I oftentimes, as we get into emergency operations, as I get eyes on and start looking at something, try to make some determinations. Is there an asset potentially that we can get from some organization that we're able to get into this road? At one point and throughout this entire event, I'll be honest with you guys, this kind of all runs together. I'm not sure when I sleep or when I don't sleep, but what I do know is at some point during the past couple of weeks, I spun up a variety of National Guard units and got National Guard units rolling into places with high water vehicles and watched U.S. soldiers going in and doing some amazing things by getting through water that I certainly wouldn't want to drive through, and through some really muddy stuff, and watch some fascinating operations in place. I've been down, San Felipe. I've been down Two Lovers Lane. I hate to make light of anything, but sometimes I had my boss, and hopefully you've all met Jody Travasero, the regional administrator for Cal OES Coastal Region. At one point, I'm on the phone, and I'm having a conversation with somebody saying, "Hey, I'm taking my boss Jody down to Lovers Lane." That can create some conflicts in your life at times when you say things like that about your boss. But proudly, as we got down there and got eyes on some of this stuff that you guys are facing. We truly see the challenges. Again, the challenges you have. It's getting the right minds at the table. It's getting the folks from your public works, from your different agencies, potentially some engineers, looking at your local contractors. Who do you have around here that has maybe some experience in building roadways, building maybe some bridges? Sound like we may have to replace some bridges, and getting some repairs in place to get that levee water stopped. What are what potential immediate options? So what I'd look at is some coordination groups, maybe an ad hoc for a coordination group to just get out there and start looking at some potential short-term repairs versus long-term repairs. I think you're right. We're early on. We got a lot more rain potentially coming this year, and as that continues on, what do we want to have in place? I realize at times that Band-Aid may be the biggest and most important thing to patch that hole that's going to keep people at least safe in your community. But act now, act early, act now. Don't wait for the, and I hate to say it this way, don't wait for the checks to be written before you take action. Get out there, get on the ground, and start getting done what needs to be done, and then rely on the fact that there's several other counties around you, several other cities as well, that are going through the exact same challenge. And I believe with the communications that your county specifically has, very, very open communications through Kevin at least, and in our office, to truly paint a clear picture in our initial damage assessment and creating a regional summary of the event to be able to paint a picture so people can look at it and say, here's what's happening, folks. Here's a clear picture. I have a 35 gig chip with view from the, well, I hate using the term drone because that always gets people stirred up where I come from. But having one of the unmanned aircraft flying above and getting a whole bunch of great footage for us to be able to put down and document and show exactly where your levee breaks are, the expansion of the water, the damage that's there, and a lot of good information that we're sending up. I'm also sharing that with Fish and Wildlife folks so that they have kind of a clear picture on some of the challenges you're facing with the debris that's currently in your waterways. So I hope that answers that.
Thank you, Supervisor Vitello. Well, thank you for that lengthy presentation.
Thank you. Sorry, I get a little wordy sometimes.
Oh, no, don't worry about it. We're good. We're good.
All right.
Okay. We'll thank you. Kevin, we're done, right, Kevin?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Okay, mics are on. Hey, Chase, I've been looking at you. I've been looking at you. Hey. I have a. It's $5, Chase. All right, thank you. Next item is 29, Georgia, Human Resources.
Good morning, supervisors. Thank you for listening to us this morning. I have much better news than what you just received. I'm feeling pretty good right now. All of the hiccups that we've had pale in comparison. They're all very easily resolvable. So that's the good news. But I do want to say what we've done here is taken an aircraft carrier that has been sailing in one direction for 20 plus years and tried to make a 90-degree turn, which has affected, we've moved the cheese for over 600 people, not counting dependents. So that said, this move from CalPERS Health to CSAC EIA has been a major undertaking. We knew that when we started out. We've had some things work wonderfully well. We've had some hiccups. I do have some folks here. I have Sydney DiDomenico, who's the Employee Benefits Manager from CSAC EIA, who's going to speak with you. Tom Scher, the Senior Vice President from Alliant Employee Benefits. Aaron Thomas, Vice President from Alliant. Lisa Farrell, the Assistant Vice President. And Melissa Johns, our county's account executive. They won't all bore you, but they will be here also for questions, and then we're going to meet with them. But I also, before we hear from them, I do want to recognize some folks who have just gone above and beyond the call. They knew we were going to have a lot of work to do. We learned some things, kind of lessons learned in any implementation. There's always a few lessons learned about, gee, if we'd have done this, that might have been simpler. We thought we'd covered everything, and of course then we still had humans involved, so that makes a difference. But I want to recognize Steve Coffey and his staff. Would you guys please stand up? We have Priscilla Herrera, who's one of our HR techs. We have Rosemary Malone, who at the time was working under our workforce development during all of this. She has since successfully become a regular county employee and is now part of our staff through a competitive recruitment. We also had Elvia Barosio, who is on leave right now. And these folks are the ones who just took the yeoman's job. I had the easy piece of it. I can look at it from 10,000 feet and say, well, what we should do is, but they're doing it, and they worked really hard. We have a couple of members from our insurance committee, and I'd like to have them stand as well. Susie Caston and Laura Nakaroto. Did I pronounce that correctly? Good. And they represent SEIU, but were integral as part of our insurance committee. And Susie, when we did start to have a few of the little hiccups that you'll hear about, Susie has been very, very good at trying to get factual information to give us the facts of what's happening, not just, hey, so-and-so didn't get this. There was none of that mass hysteria. She provided us with very specific information, things we could track down and work with. And so I do want to say thank you to them, actually all of our committee, but especially these folks, and they took the time to come here today so that they could hear. We invited them as part of the process to hear the presentation from Alliance. So I do want to thank HR, and I want to thank Susie, Laura, and the rest of the committee on behalf of all of you. With that, I'm going to step back and let our folks from CSAC and Alliance speak to you.
Thank you, Georgia. Hi, good morning, Board of Supervisors. I am super excited to be here before you today as a certified employee benefits geek. I'm the employee benefits manager for CSAC Excess Insurance Authority, which essentially means I have responsibility for the overall program administration. Georgia mentioned we're joined here today by Alliant. They're the contracted consultant to the EIA programs. This is a phenomenal dynamic team. We have Lisa Farrell here. She also mentioned Melissa Johns. One of the things that I really want the board and also the public to know is that Georgia's right. This was an incredibly daunting task. Whenever you are moving a particular member out of the CalPERS environment, one thing many of you may not know is we don't get any of your data. We literally start from scratch, and in that is a great struggle, but it also becomes one of your great successes because you end up with a database that you own at the end of this, and that is very important and vital on an ongoing basis. When we first met with Georgia, and I'm going to take a moment and also personally thank Georgia and Steve Coffey and their staff because we would not have accomplished what we just accomplished without them. They were absolutely instrumental to the process. When we faced challenges, they rose to the occasion. They were able to work intimately with your employee and your retiree population, and they represented the program very well as we walked through the transition. When we first met, back in, I believe it was early fall of 2016, we had what we call our implementation kickoff meeting, and our primary goal was to communicate to Georgia and to Steve and the staff some of the challenges that we would face as we walked through the implementation and also some of the successes. But also in that, we wanted to make sure that we paved the proper expectation for those successes, for those challenges, and what ultimately we knew would be some employee and member disruption because that is expected when you walk through this magnitude of a process. The key to that and the success in that is how we came together as a team in order to immediately identify and address those issues and respond very efficiently to your employees and your retirees and the staff of the county in order to resolve those issues. I'm incredibly proud of this team as a representative of CSAC EIA. So with that, we have actually prepared a document. I believe you all have it, and it's also available to those out within the chambers. It's an outline of the successes. It's an outline of what the challenges were. We keep a very detailed description of what happens as we walk through the implementation process, and it also talks a little bit about a strategic plan that Alliance has formulated as we move forward with actually walking through the plan. So, Lisa, you might have questions of us. We don't want to take the time talking about what we've done. If anybody has any specific questions, please feel free to ask as we go. But I also want to make sure that these two ladies have the opportunity to talk about what their experience was.
So in our very first conversations, one of the things that I did know, I've been doing implementations for 16 years now. And with coming in, knowing that you're going to have at least 10,000 data elements that have to be entered, that somebody's going to have their date of birth entered wrong, or somebody's going to miss a dependent's date of birth, or what have you. So there's going to be a little bit of, I hate to use the word disruption, but a little bit of a bump. And so in that, we made different communication pieces and different things that we know, hey, if something comes up, here's, I guess, the bridge to help them get over. So there was definitely a lot of successes. I just looked at the report. Since January 1, we've processed over 500 pharmacy claims for your county. And that's huge. That means there's going to be a lot of success in that. There was some disruption where there were some people that said, hey, the pharmacy is telling me I have no coverage. You know how scary that is? I know how scary that is because I have gone through it, with my own family where I needed insurance. And when you walk up and you are depending on insurance to be there and it's not, it's disruptive. It's so hard. I don't even know the word to use. But anyways, I understand the need for that, to be a quick resource to get that resolved. So what we did is we had a plan of action. if somebody was at the pharmacy or if somebody was at the doctor's or if somebody was saying, hey, I'm not enrolled, we set a plan of action with the carriers, with the TPAs, with the county to say, if this happens, this is what we need to do to make sure they have access to care. And immediately we would take action. We've been working with Anthem, with Kaiser, with Express Scripts, with Business Solver for a long enough time to know that we cohesively as a team can make sure that no members go without their care. And that was key. And I understand we just went through, or you guys just went through a huge emergency, but sometimes there's emergencies that happen within the home, and we understand that. And we don't want insurance to be another emergency for you. And so as we stand today, a lot of the issues that you have come across, they have been resolved. We had an issue where ID cards for one population, because every population is set up in its own group number, and it had to be the largest population, but one population did not get released. Well, here we went out with the message of, hey, ID cards were released in December. They're going to have their ID cards in time, and 250 of your contracts were not released. We didn't find that out until people started calling in January 1. And so called Anthem, like, what's going on? What happened? And they're like, Lisa, one of the group numbers didn't get released. And let me give you a little bit of backstory on the releasing of ID cards. What we try to do is ensure that your ID cards have correct phone numbers, correct group numbers, a correct group name. So we actually hold all the ID cards for every new group implementation. We check the phone numbers before they go out, and we check that everything it looks logistically correct. So in that checking, which is a good thing to do, we hold the ID cards, but the bad thing is one of them didn't get released. So, of course, we released it quickly enough or whatever, and that will never happen with your county because we'll never have a reason to hold your ID cards ever again. But it gives us something to do for the future implementations to ensure that our carriers have some sort of checks and balances to ensure things like every ID card, every group number has been released. So there's lessons learned in that. But I can tell you the overall experience with the county and knowing that you guys have gone through a major undertaking, there are more successes than failures. And like Georgia was saying, if it wasn't for the teams and if it wasn't for the people that came together to ensure that people had no issues getting their access to care, we would still be struggling today. But we had the right teams, we had the right people, and I'm excited to say that we are over the hump of implementation and that everything is now set into place as it should be. So I don't know if you want to...
Before a young lady steps off, if Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sure.
I think I was one of those guys that didn't get the ID card.
If you're on the Anthem Choice PPO plan active, yes.
Okay. I still don't have it, though.
Okay. We did order ID cards. We do have now that database that we were talking about. Was it Georgia that was talking, or you were talking about? We can actually look to see if you're in the system with the correct address. And we can also, I have a full roster of all of the enrollment. And we sent it to the county. They can see that you're enrolled. If you still don't have an ID card and you're enrolled, you're in the system correctly, you have the correct address, we can trigger a new ID card for you. I would say a lot of times the ID cards don't come with the envelope that says ID card, so do open all mail. In most implementations that I've gone through in all the years, is the majority of ID cards, because they're not marked, get thrown away and people didn't realize they didn't have it. I'm not saying that's what you did.
No, I open all my mail.
Lisa, but we have confirmed that Anthem has re-released that batch, and
yes.
we expect them to be arriving.
Yeah, so they have re-released the batch. We actually, there was another issue that came up, and I don't know if you have a middle name or a middle initial, but if you do, let me tell you of another thing that happened, and that was not a fun thing. But the data entries that were being done, they put in the first name and middle initial in the very same Excel column. So if everybody knows an Excel spreadsheet, in column A would have Michael M. Well, when the system, there was a space between, but when the system uploaded it at Anthem, it mushed the space or got rid of the space and made it look like Michael. And so then your name was incorrect. So then we had to reissue ID cards. And then when we got that corrected, the ID cards still were wrong. And so I was like, okay, Anthem, what's going on? Why didn't your system pick up the correction? So some people are going to probably get 3 to 4 sets of ID cards. The fact that you haven't gotten one, we will definitely address, and we can look to make sure that that's been sent out. We can see what data was sent out. But again, the county has all the rosters of what the carriers have, and they also have their system of record, what the third-party administrator has, so they can see that you are enrolled.
Yeah, I've gone to the doctor right at the first of the year without the ID card. Of course, I haven't got his bill yet, but we'll find out later, I guess. But I just am interested that if there's a couple hundred cards that didn't go out, when are our employees get them? And just so we're, I'm not that worried about how we got to that, why it didn't happen, but going forward, when we could all expect to have the cards.
Yeah, so it's once the card is triggered, it usually takes 7 to 10 business days for a card to reach somebody's homes. And so I know that it's been at least 7 to 10 business days since we've re-released those cards, because we found out, I think, on the 3rd or 4th of January that the ID cards hadn't been released. So the fact that you haven't received any, we definitely can check to see what's going on.
Okay.
It could be just the zip code, one number wrong, or something could be wrong. So we'll double check and triple check your address to make sure that it's right.
Thank you.
We'll check on the whole batch.
Yeah. So we'll get those.
Boy, that's the wrong people.
I wasn't the only one.
I'm telling you. I mean, we actually just implemented 4 accounts, and this happened to one of our other cities but their population was 16 people on the one group number. And I was just like, okay, why couldn't it have been a small population like that? We can account for them and check everything off. But we did ask Anthem to one by one release the ID cards to make sure that everybody did get released. But, we can look in the system to see if your guys' ID cards were released. And we've given all of the contact information and all the information that the county would need to be able to look those things up. The other thing you can do, too, is if you register on the Anthem website or on Express Scripts website, you can register using your Social Security number and your date of birth, and you should be able to be found in the system.
Supervisor Munzer?
I'm sorry?
Mr. Chair. So I, too, was one of the ones that didn't receive a card. I have since received a card, but my wife had surgery in the middle of December, and therapy was continuing on into this month. Mm-hmm. So I was very upset that the fact that we had not received cards.
Right.
And fortunately, Georgia and Steve calmed me down because I was looking for someone to vent my... Yeah,
you can go ahead. Go ahead. I get it.
And actually, between the January 2nd and January 3rd, my wife transitioned from home care therapy to outpatient care therapy. And with the outpatient, they were a little reluctant to start the therapy without a card in place. I know I was told I could use my smartphone, bring up the card, and when I tried to do that, the CalPERS card still popped up. And so I was frustrated. I was upset. But like I said, I wanted to know, or I wanted to make sure our staff that was being affected by this, that we as the Board of Supervisors were the ones that made this decision to change this aircraft carrier. Yeah. We were aware of this, and we were doing everything we could to rectify the situation. And I guess slowly it's being rectified. Yeah. It sounds like there's still some problems with these cards.
Yeah, I mean, the cards, they definitely, have been corrected, but we definitely want to see why is it that they're not reaching the homes. The one thing that we have done, especially for the pharmacy cards, is that if anything's being directed incorrectly, it comes back to the county office. And so if the outgoing mail, unless it lands in somebody's home, that they don't put it back and say return to sender, wrong address. If they don't do that, then of course we won't know. But if they're doing that, the the mail order is to return to the county offices for the Express Scripts. For Anthem, they don't have that set in place. It actually just returns to Anthem. But we definitely want to double check to see what's going on with why are they not reaching your homes. Additionally, I understand being in a situation where you already are dealing with an urgent situation. This should not be what you're having to deal with. I get it. And so, I do apologize deeply that was an issue for you. Because I know, just going through it myself, that should not be something you have to deal with. And so we are working our way through this ID card issue. It sounds like, some of you don't have it, but the resolution with getting the ID cards released or getting them corrected because of the middle name or the middle initial being combined together, all of that had been resolved. What I do see, and this is something I've talked with Express Scripts about, and it could be some of the outpatient cares or whatever, are having issues with taking the member's word that, hey, I've changed insurance, call the carrier, do this research, and I will prove to you that I am enrolled. If they called Anthem, they would see that you're enrolled just by your social and date of birth. I've had a lot of pharmacies, or I don't want to say pharmacies, but I had a lot of people being turned away at the pharmacy saying that their coverage had been canceled. And so I'd pick up the phone with the pharmacy, and I'm like, here's the same information that this member is giving you. Run it through. And they're like, oh, the claim paid. Yes, it did. Do the work. Make sure that you're doing what the member is asking you to do because the claims will pay. The members are enrolled. There should be no reason that you're creating this chaos for the member. So I've actually addressed Express Scripts, and I told them, I want you to address the pharmacies. I want you to send a memo out to all the surrounding counties for San Benito and in San Benito County pharmacies to let them know, hey, the County of San Benito has changed plans. Here's the information, and here's the phone number if you have a question. Because I think it's unacceptable that people go to the pharmacy and they don't take that extra step of excellence to see if somebody actually can get their claim processed. So we're addressing it from that end. It's not something they can do so quickly. It's something that they have to put together and have all the legal teams look at the wording of the flyers that they're going to send out to the pharmacies, but they are going to get it out there so that members, when they go to the pharmacies or if there's offices like this that you need us to reach out to, we will reach out to them and tell them they need to do that extra step and get a hold of the carrier because people are enrolled. There is access. They should not be denied.
Thank you. Supervisor Rivas?
Yes. So thank you for the information. It's helpful in reviewing the memo about the implementation review. Looking at the matrix that you all provided, maybe you can elaborate on, I believe it's like the third page, retiree premium payments as a challenge and the cause. Maybe if you guys can go into detail about what the issues are there.
Yeah, so after January 1st, after the transition took place from the CalPERS Medical to EIA Health Medical, I'm Melissa Johns, again, account executive. I'm the extension of Steve and his team, so I'm in the trenches with them. So any questions that they're fielding, they often will pass to me, and I'll help resolve them as well. And some of these questions you can see on this third page are ones that we've been fielding most frequently after January 1st. Now that we have our prescription ID card, what do we do? How do we go about it? On the retiree piece, specifically speaking to the premium payments, prior with CalPERS, with the CalPERS retirement, any premium payments that were needed for benefits, retiree benefits coverage, would be deducted from the CalPERS retirement check. With the move to EIA Health, it's a different process for retirees, which we communicated back during open enrollment, that you would be receiving a letter with coupons to remit payment from a checking account. You can go online and set up an auto debit, whatever's easier for you to pay your premiums, because they will not come directly out of that CalPERS check anymore. That's not an available option. So that's been some of the questions that we've been receiving from retirees specifically. And currently, Steve and myself and the rest of the HR team, we're actually going to be meeting shortly today to talk about strategy going forward, specifically for retirees, because we know that is a subset of the population that needs a little bit more communication. They can't maybe just go to the website and pull information where we're posting a lot of this. They might need a member-directed email or a member-directed letter that gets sent, or maybe office hours. Sit down, talk with them, have the, answer those questions one-on-one, and even maybe doing like an awareness meeting where I'll come out and we'll talk about the benefits, answer those questions, the value adds, things like that. So we're in the process of planning for that in 2018 and going forward, specifically for retirees as well as employees ongoing.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. On Supervisor Rita's question, excuse me, and I know this from personal because my mom, I'm helping her through her supplemental and Medicare. I think that in your implementation or moving forward, there's got to be like a grace period because you don't want to terminate a retiree
Correct.
just because they didn't submit their payment on time.
Correct. And yes, there is a grace period for payments. So
I'm not talking 5 to 10 days. I mean,
no, we're talking actually 30
maybe
days.
a month. I mean, I'll be honest,
exactly.
maybe a month or two.
Correct, and we completely
Because
understand that.
they're the representation of our community, and they're going to come to our board meetings and complaining to us. And guess what? We're going to throw that on you guys. So let's avoid that, and let's provide customer service to them.
Right, and that's why we've had the communications with Steve and his team. The grace period is 30 days per business solver, but we're going to pull a census and see, which retirees may or may not have remitted that payment yet. Reach out to them directly, talk to them and stay on them to make sure that it doesn't lapse. And if for some reason they're out of the country, I know I had those questions be brought to me when I was here back in October. I'm traveling the world for a few months. I can't remit payment. Let's get that email address. Let's reach out to them. We'll figure out a strategy to make sure you have that coverage. Again, our goal is to make sure everybody has their coverage, period. So that's what we're here to do.
And just so you know, too, in working with Business Solver, they know that they need to be very careful about canceling anybody just because of, whether it be someone who's a retiree or a COBRA member, because both of those bills are being paid directly to Business Solver. They know that they're not going to just do it flippantly. There is a system in place that at minimum there's the 30 days, but in between the 30 days there's notice after notice to say, hey, just letting you know this needs to be paid. I think I just got email about somebody got a notice before the due date, and I'm like, why did this go out? We don't need to cause undue stress on members as well, but in that the 30 days is not the drop dead date and we're just going to cancel. There's definitely an approach to the county to say, hey, these people haven't paid. What do you want us to do? And there's an outreach that the county can make. The CSAC EIA program is a self-funded program, and it's not a robot. We have people, counties, cities, special districts are running the program, and they add that personalized touch to this program to say, look, we care about our county members, and we want to make sure that people are not just flippantly being canceled. So I hear what you're saying, and that's the process that we actually have into place. So we're very careful when it comes to canceling anybody, and the county would be made aware before that cancellation even happened.
Thank you. Okay.
I have one thing to say as a representative of CSAC EIA. I would like to thank the Board of Supervisors for making this decision to move forward with the EIA Health Program. It was a big task to move from PERS. PERS is the conglomerate that most counties are participating in. But I will tell you this, you have entered an era for the county of full transparency. Gone are the days where you will be regionally rated and have nothing to tie that back to. Under our program, you have a database of your employees and your retirees and their dependents with their benefits, and that's an amazing thing. When it comes to renewal time, you will be able to look and know exactly what's driving your claims costs, and that will be communicated to you from a utilization standpoint. And that's a win-win when you're looking at cost containment. So welcome to the program, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's see what the public thinks about you guys. When we open up to the public, anyone from the public?
Marty Richard from Hollister. I wonder if I could ask if the county has a universal email for all active employees and a universal email for all retirees and a universal email for employees that may have recently left and are still on your system, because essentially I am unfavorably impressed in the number of errors we're talking about here. I'm not personally involved. This is too many errors. Too many errors of too many different kinds. I think it shows, frankly, I got to be very honest with you, if I was in your place, I'd be very upset. I think it shows poor management. I think it shows poor operations. I mean, we've got people with their names squeezed together with their thing. We've got groups that didn't get their cards. We got other groups that maybe don't even know the cards are coming. Your ultimate resource for quality on this is going to be the employees who have to use the system. And if you're going to give them problems every time you change the system, they're not going to trust any change you do in the future. So what you're going to have to do is reach out to the employees, and if you have universal email, one email that'll go to every active employee, you can send an email to them and say, look at your card and see it and make sure your middle initial isn't attached to your back name. If it is, here's who you call to get it fixed, the back of your front name. Or by now you should have your card. And if you don't have your card, maybe you threw it out and maybe we didn't send it to you, so please call us at this number. And just send out one email, get responsibility, and get everybody at one time. I mean, that's the way you do it. They are the ultimate quality control engineer for this system, okay? Because there's obviously too many errors being made on this end. That's my opinion. People want your business. They shouldn't come here with a bunch of excuses about how many errors they've made, because that's not who I give my business to. And I'm not a user in this system, so this is not personal with me, but I know you get screwed up with Express Scripts. I use Express Scripts because the government forces me to use it. I know you get screwed up with Express Scripts, you're going to be on the phone a long time to get it straightened out, because I have that personal experience. So what I think you should do is make sure you can reach every employee. If you don't already have it, you should try to get an email account for every employee so that you can tell them, make sure you have your card by today. If you don't, here's where you call. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty.
I would like to follow up with just a couple of things. One of the things that I really, really want to emphasize is...
Georgia, can you hold on a minute? Is it a response to Marty's comments, or is it global?
Actually, it's more global.
Can you hold off a little?
I will be happy to.
Anyone else from the public?
Susie Caston. I am a county employee, member of SEIU. I was on the Health Insurance Committee. I was also on the bargaining team that helped to bring all this to fruition with being able to get out of CalPERS. I, too, have not gotten my ID cards. I have been in constant communication. I was one of the ones that got my middle name smushed. I've been in constant communication with Georgia and Steve and the team. I just want to say thank you to everybody. It has been a little bit frustrating, but I have faith that it's all being worked out. I appreciate the Board of Supervisors and all the work that you've done. I feel your pain as far as not getting cards. I have not been denied any service. I have used medical, and I have gotten my bills. So I know that all that is working. I've had no problems with the prescription end of it. Express Scripts has been fine. So thank you to you guys for being so open and answering our questions and helping us. And on behalf of the Health Insurance Committee and SEIU, I appreciate working with you all.
Hold on, Susie.
Yes.
I was actually going to ask you to come up, one of you, just the feedback from the rank and file, the SEIU members, especially probably the ones that have not received their cards in a timely manner. What are you hearing?
There has been quite a bit of feedback in our departments. I think Laura has had some communication from people, us being part of the Health Insurance Committee. I do know that in the very beginning, because we were on a holiday break, our offices were closed through the Christmas holidays, so we didn't get back into work until the 3rd of January. Hearing from people after that, especially scrambling in my office, people that hadn't gotten their cards, we were directed to go contact Anthem. I contacted Anthem because my daughter had a doctor's appointment, and they sent me a certificate of my coverage. We were able to take that to the doctor.
How did they send that to you?
They emailed it to me.
Because I asked for something similar, and the representative that I spoke to said, "Oh, our system's down. I can't do it today."
Well, I will say that the very first person I talked to with Anthem, she immediately told me that, do you know how many millions of cards we're processing right now? Kind of rudely. I did get off the phone with her. Another girl that was sitting right next to me had gotten her certificate from somebody she talked to. I called back to Anthem, got a wonderful person that immediately emailed me and couldn't do it quickly enough for me. So I think it just depended on who you spoke with at the time. I do understand that they were probably overwhelmed being January 1st, all these new people that had gotten coverage, and they were probably all answering the same, not only our county, but other individuals that had the service. I have not heard anything else negatively. There are still a few outstanding people in my office that haven't gotten cards. I told them that I would be speaking today. And as a part of now, I am also the SEIU president. I will be putting out a notice to everybody in our membership via the SEIU website, letting everybody know that there still is some transition issues happening. And if anybody has any direct questions or problems, that they can either contact myself or I'll direct them to who they need to speak with to get their problems handled.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Susie, in your memo communications back to the rank and file, I would highly suggest that you include the pain that Supervisor Patello and Munces are sharing with the rank and file, that they haven't also gotten their cards.
Absolutely.
Too. Because I can hear they got their cards, so we haven't gotten ours yet.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Okay. Georgia?
Well, I do want to add that fortunately, or not, the computer doesn't know what your position is. So as you can see,
it's good right now.
It doesn't seem to matter, regardless of where you fit into the organization. But that said, I think the important thing, and I failed to thank the Alliant team, and granted, we had more challenges than we had originally planned, even though we knew there would be a lot. But we realized early on that, oh my gosh, things are not working as we planned. It's never as smooth as it should have been. However, we learned we needed to triage. And so what we did is Steve and company, as well as Alliance, started taking in information. But in terms of that triage, our focus was on ensuring that people had access to care. Somebody can't get care, somebody can't get a prescription. And we have found some doctors' offices were very good about calling, others not so much. But that said, we tried to put out some other communication. The beauty of this database that Sydney was referring to earlier is we will be able to develop more targeted communications. We can send emails to county employees. Then we have to use the U.S. mail to retirees. We find they don't always open their mail and those kinds of things. So hopefully for those who prefer to do business via email, we can contact them. Some don't. So we're looking at all of those things, including some more strategic communication, updating our website. We started putting information out there. Just, get this out so people can read it. I went to look at it shortly after the first of the year and thought, oh my gosh, we need to fix this. So we're going to strategically align that so that it's up to date. We don't need to know what happens if you don't get your card by January 1st. By the time we update our website and our FAQs, that's kind of that's at the bottom. But also creating for retirees on our website. And we know some retirees use the internet and some do not. But creating what we call maybe our retirees corner, where we can put specific information to retirees. So if someone doesn't use that we could still go in rather than develop a new communication and a personal letter to every retiree with a different question. We can take that information, and if we have to mail it to a retiree, that's great, but at least we have all of it out there in some kind of strategic fashion. Right now, it needs some work, only because we tried to get a lot of information that was rapidly changing. So that said, my biggest issue was to let you know that our big triage in any of this is to ensure employees have access to care, retirees, dependents, anyone. We've called clinics, we've called pharmacies. Alliant has done the yeoman's share of that, but we've been doing that where somebody's on the phone, they're at the clinic, they have a problem, we get it straightened out.
Thank you, Georgia. Supervisor Batalon.
Yeah, I just want to say that, this was a real big project, and I know Steve at HR and his staff in the administration has worked hard. The Alliant people for coming up and telling us about some of the problems that they have had. I would have been shocked when, as one supervisor anyway, making this tough decision to switch from PERS to this service if it went seamless. I didn't expect it to go seamless. And, I think to our employees, what's important is that this is really our first meeting of the year. And the implementation of this program means a lot to this Board of Supervisors, to the satisfaction of our employees and our retirees. And we want to keep working on that and make sure, all the fixes are done. And if there's problems, we address it now. So I think I'm completely on board. I believe this was the right decision still today. And, medical services in the entire country are a mess. And we're just trying to do the best we can and keep the costs down for everybody and move forward. Thank you very much for making the presentation.
And something for you to know, I spoke with an HR director of a county who moved out of CalPERS Health and into CSAC 6 years ago. This would have been their first year that they could have returned to CalPERS. So I asked the question. I said, what do you think? Would you do it? Have you been happy? Never. We will never go back. And so that was good feedback for us. One of the things we're doing today was going to meet with Alliant to start kind of planning for open enrollment. We'll ultimately then be meeting with the insurance committee again to start those activities. So it doesn't end with everybody getting ID cards. We have to plan for now, how do we communicate? How do we streamline this? This is all about improvement now.
Thank you, Georgia. Supervisor Munzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, and if you said, and if any of the presenters have said, I apologize if I missed it. The employees that have not received their cards yet and are concerned about it, do they have somewhere to go? Do they have a phone number? Do they have something that they can go and talk to a live person and be assured that the card is in the mail?
Here's what we have. As I understand, we have the file, and I've kept my fingers off of those things so that you have less problems, not more. But our staff has the file. Alliant has the file. We have that information. We can verify that. So, yes, they can call. They can email. They can certainly call me 24/7, and I can get Tom Share 24/7. There is no Anthem 24/7 number. We didn't have it with CalPERS. We don't have it now. It's not something that we can get Anthem to do. But the reality is people are generally, once we get through this, they're not denied access to care. I have an insurance card. I don't know where it is. Nobody ever asks me for it anymore. They just look up my social. So it's not the same system, but it is through Anthem.
I just want to make sure any employees that are concerned about not having a physical card, they have somewhere they can go.
Yes, they can contact us.
Okay.
Yes. And that's what Steve and his staff have been fielding.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Ray?
Just to add to that, I know the comment was about email and having an emails for all employees. Really, in some respects, we do have a form of that on our website. So if you go to San Benito County website, you actually go to HR and click on 2017 Healthcare Open Enrollment Information. There's all the information there. As this process has been going through, they've been putting all this information either in soft copy. If there's an issue with the temporary card, you can go there and actually look at getting a temporary card, what the process is for it. So just to make sure that everyone's aware, all that information's on our website. Residents or employees or retirees can go access that there. So make sure everyone's aware of that.
Ray's correct, and that's the information we're also now in the process of looking to streamline to make it very easy to find. All the information is there. Sometimes you got to click 2 or 3 times. We're trying to make that a little more efficient.
Thank you, Georgia. Thank you. Okay, well, actually, you know what? Let's, Ray, put this for 3 or 4 months in the future. Come back to the board, give us an update. We, the board, expect 0 errors. 3 months is good enough time. Any one of our employees that does not have what they need in terms of cards, access information, it's unacceptable. So come back in 3 to 4 months, Ray, and then hope we get to hear 0. Thank you. All right. Next item is number 30.
30.
Pájaro.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This item's out of administration. This was a request by your board last year to come back, and so at that point we were doing that. I had actually missioned our management analyst, Louis Valdez, to contact the folks and actually bring this item to the board. So it's here today, and here's Louis.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we were not able to confirm that the folks from the Pajaro River would be here today, even though we had pushed it back to the agenda for today. So unfortunately, they're not here. The last time we had this on the agenda, they canceled on us at the last second. They had some unforeseen circumstances that they indicated they were not able to work around. So they're not here today, and we did try and reach out to them to confirm their attendance today. We were not able to do that. So if it's the pleasure of the chair and the board, we'd like to push it to the next meeting if we can get confirmation from them that they will be in attendance. It's been a little difficult. And this is a request that goes back to Supervisor Barrios when she was on the board. She wanted for them to come and do that. So I'd like to kind of engage with them and maybe fold this into a wider ranging discussion about watershed management and the levees and so forth. I think that would be beneficial.
Okay. Supervisor Rivas?
Chair, I'll make the, or I'll move that we direct staff to be in contact with the Pajaro River Watershed Flood Prevention Authority, and let's try to schedule this on the agenda. And let's try to schedule this on the agenda as soon as possible.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Supervisor Medina. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we'll reschedule it at a future date.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to item number 31. Mr. Barnes? Well, I guess it's be a surrogate.
Hi there. Good morning. Today is just a quick update, no action needed, regarding the proposed Monterey Bay Community Power. You've heard about over the past few years and approved our intent to be in the program. I believe it was in October. There have been several other meetings and negotiations going on since then, and they have the final documents ready. They will be for you, for your review and consideration at the next board meeting. I just wanted to kind of refresh memories and see if there's any questions we need to work on in advance of that meeting. Just a little bit of a recap. Beginning in 2013, the Monterey Bay Community Power was formed as a region-wide collaborative partnership comprised of all 21 local governments within the greater Monterey Bay area. This collaborative was created to examine the potential for a community choice energy program in the region. The goals are to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, provide electric power and other forms of energy to customers at competitive prices, and in addition, the program seeks to reduce energy consumption, stimulate the local economy by creating local jobs, and promote long-term electric rate stability and reliability for the residents. The JPA will be composed of jurisdictions within the three-county region here, Monterey, Santa Cruz, and San Benito. It will be formed in April 2017, so in just a few months, and begin providing electrical service to customers in the spring of 2018. The governing board structure will include a policy board composed of elected officials to provide guidance and approval in the areas of strategic planning and goal setting, passage of agency budget and customer rates, and large capital expenditures. There will also be a separate operations board composed of senior executive staff to provide oversight and support to the CEO on matters pertaining to the provision of electrical service to customers. The governing board will consist of 11 seats allocated by population. 5 jurisdictions with 50,000 or more population will have a permanent seat on the board. Those are Santa Cruz County, Monterey County, Salinas, Watsonville, and Santa Cruz City. Additionally, they have agreed to our request to have a permanent seat on the board in recognition of the large geographical area that we represent. The 5 remaining seats would be shared between regional cities. So Hollister and San Juan Bautista would rotate shared seat for one of their seats. In order to move forward with agency and program implementation, the community power will need between $2 and $3 million to pay for startup costs. The Santa Cruz County has issued a banking and credit services RFP seeking a third-party lender, and the bid deadline for those services is this February. Financial participation for members is proposed to be a credit guarantee to support the pre-revenue startup loan of up to $3 million. This guarantee obligation will be distributed on a per-seat basis and will take the form of a letter of credit, cash collateral, or interagency agreement. In the example of an 11-member board, each seat on the board would be allocated 1/11, or 9.1%, of the credit guarantee burden, roughly around $300,000. Shared seat members could divide the credit guarantee among the cities as they see fit. The final amount of this loan and credit guarantee requirement will be confirmed once ordinances are passed and loan offers have been received. So moving forward, at the next meeting, there will be a resolution and an ordinance for your consideration to establish and join the Monterey Bay Community Power. So they have given us the permanent seat, and we would need the credit guarantee of around $300,000 to continue participating. So those are things to consider. One other issue that came up during the last executive meeting revolves around our 2 cities, Hollister and San Juan Bautista. Hollister, as of yet, has not agreed or passed their resolution of intent. They're still interested. They heard a presentation a couple weeks ago. They did not have a vote. They will be voting on it, I think, after your next meeting or just the day before. The concern is if they are out, even if they are in, San Juan Bautista would then be on the hook for either half or all of that 9.1%. So somewhere between $150,000 or $300,000. They had expressed concern that they don't have the ability to, guarantee that amount of money. The CAO had talked to the city manager and city councilman at that meeting and suggested that we may be able to assist with some of that. So I wanted to get that issue and that idea out today to see if that's something you'd be interested in assisting them with so that they can participate in the program as well. Are there any questions related to this?
I'm sorry, I apologize. Any questions, fellow supervisors? open up to the public. Oh, Supervisor Munzer?
Well, I still have a lot of questions. So we voted a few meetings back to continue the participation. So we're going to have, what are we going to have at our next meeting? A resolution?
The next meeting will be the actual agreement to join and to establish an ordinance that says Monterey Bay Community Power will be available to provide power here, and that we will join as a founding member and agree to appoint someone to the operations board for the one seat that we have.
Okay, so there's supposed to be an educational process to our residents explaining what all this means, because we're going to force them into this, and then they're going to have this educational process to explain how they can opt out if they want to or not. So are we basically forcing them into it with our decision at our next meeting, and then the educational process will start to teach them how to opt out, and or the benefits of staying in?
So my understanding is the educational process will occur sometime over the next year before any power is being sold, before there is anything to give the customers. And essentially, I mean, that's basically...
But we've already had
Yes.
Our action at our next meeting is going to be forcing our residents into this before it's been explained to them.
Provided we don't like the education that's happening or some of the other things that come out, we can always come out later. But that was the City of Hollister's concern as well, is about the fact that it's an opt-out situation, not an opt-in, and what sort of education there will be. So at the next meeting, we are requesting to have a representative from this group be here to handle some more of the hard-hitting questions. But that would be a good one for them. But essentially, you're right.
Okay. So then our action at our next meeting is going to put us on the hook for some money. And then what you brought up today was we may have to assist San Juan if they want to.
That's purely up to you. That was a concept the CAO had discussed with them to help them maybe stay in the program. Otherwise, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to do it. Now, I just want to clarify that the $300,000 is just a guarantee until the Monterey Bay Community Power starts generating money, and then we'll be off the hook for the guarantee. So we're not actually we're just encumbering the guarantee, right? We're not actually spending it or giving it to anybody.
Oh, this money is not part of the startup costs?
Well, it is, but they're going to go for financing to cover that.
Okay.
And so everyone just has to pony up the collateral.
It's a credit, basically, is what all we're doing. It's a credit insurance is what we're going to do, which is about $330,000, $350,000. So we're just assuring that there's going to be some, funds if it does go belly up or whatever. But from what I'm understanding is that those funds will eventually come in, and then those will be released back to us, basically.
So I guess to feel more comfortable going forward with this, we definitely need someone here at our next meeting or whenever this resolution comes before us to explain the educational process that will be going out to the public.
Due to the timing, they are requesting that everybody pass these resolutions and ordinances by the end of next month. So I have it scheduled for February 7th to make sure that we meet the deadline. They can come here if you want to continue it or still think about it, obviously.
Yeah, I would feel more comfortable hearing what the educational process was.
Sure.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I wanted to talk today and then have it at the first February meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ray, this is just to have a seat on the table, right?
That's right, and that's the important thing that your board requested was to have a seat, one seat. Originally, we were going to have a shared seat with the local cities because of the size of our jurisdiction. So we went and lobbied hard for that because we wanted the full seat. And they made some significant changes in the actual design of the JPA. So we have now a full seat, which is significant. But what it does is it changes the characteristics of who owes what or who's going to put up the assurance. So In some cases, the larger counties have dropped their financial assurance, and in our case, ours has been raised. A little different from the population, but we wanted the seat. So that's what's been designed by the creators of the JPA, the people that have been working on it. But I think it's a good thing and it's prudent for us. I mean, it's something that your board requested and wanted. So and one of the things that they had outlined was the year's activities and the reasons why starting up in February, because there's still a lot of work to be done. For training, for public awareness, and so on and so forth throughout the year, hiring of a CEO, and a lot of other things. So, so I think it's prudent, and it does definitely put a weighted vote for us, significantly, almost double. So,
and so if you were to not join this, then our residents would not be a part of the program, and they would not be able to, buy the power through this JPA.
I'm trying to physically picture in my mind.
Sure.
When it goes through the transmission lines, what is their energy and what's PG&E energy?
So the way it's going to work on day one, I mean, again, I'm not an expert on this, but the basic thing is that your power is going to come from where it's going to come from. Right. Okay. When the JPA buys power, they're going to be buying green power. It doesn't necessarily come to your door or necessarily even any doors within the county right away. Okay, but it's going into the grid somewhere. So somewhere, coal or whatever other types of power there are, less green power, is going to be replaced by green power.
So the physical distribution of the energy will remain the same.
Yes.
The only difference is the actual accounting of the accounts. What this account belongs to?
Your bill still comes from PG&E. They still handle all the money part of it, the transmission, the service, the metering, all still PG&E. It's just where that power gets into the system. Now, eventually, their big goal, of course, is to produce and provide local power sources of green energy, either solar, wind, ocean, to be able to put that right into our local, energy and into your actual house. So that's the big vision.
Almost like a hedge fund group.
I mean, they'll be buying power, that's already out there. They'll be encouraging the development of green power plants elsewhere as well as here. So,
Okay. Any other comments, Phil? I'm sorry, Ray.
Yeah, my understanding as well is that if a resident has overbuilt their solar, they can actually sell it back onto the grid. So that's a benefit to the local residents if they have extra solar panels and they can actually receive some money back for that. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. It can be encouraged smaller scale. It doesn't all have to be Panoche Valley solar type development. It can be much smaller scale, can still participate with this. And they will have several rate what they're shooting for, one at least that is cheaper than current rates, one that's about the same but has even more green power, and then something that's maybe even like 100% green. So they're going to have different stages, all of which they promise will be greener than what you get from PG&E now, and at least one would be cheaper than PG&E right now.
Okay, quick. I just thought of it right now.
Yeah.
In the contract, and we should read it, and we should know this, it says that, is there a percentage of how much it should be green energy?
I believe they indicate what the initial amount will be, and again, there'll be different tiers. If I remember right, the lowest tier is going to be double the amount of green energy that's in PG&E's system right now, and then the other tiers would go up from there with a little bit higher cost.
Is it it's a written, dry? Is the ink dry on that they're going to do that, or it's their objective to?
I can't say 100%, but they were throwing out some pretty definite numbers. I want to say 62%, and then they're going to get all the way up to 100. Their goal is to have them all be 100% within a certain amount of time, so that it is stipulated somehow in there. I just don't remember, if they were exact numbers or, like you said, objectives.
Okay, because I'm just thinking that at the end of the day, if they produce no alternative energy alternatives, they could just become a broker for purchasing energy from PG and just selling it to the community.
Yeah, I'm sure there's language in there to
Okay.
prevent that.
All right, okay, good. All right, let me open up to the public for questions. Anyone from the public?
Unless things have changed, Marty Richard from Hollister, unless things have changed, the presentation that was made to the city actually was a little different concerning guarantees and who would guarantee what and the problems of how many people you have. I sat through it, and I'm absolutely positive that the presentation said that the guarantees would be based on population. In other words, if you got 2% of the population, you'd step up for 2% of the guarantee. And that was one of Hollister's complaints, just to make sure. And like I said, things may have changed. It's been like 3 weeks or something. But at that time, what they were told was you have to put up a percent equal to your population in Hollister as a guarantee, and it is a guarantee, not money up front. And when they asked about getting a representation equal to their population, they were told no. So one of the sticking points was, you got to put up money equal to your population, but you don't get represented equal to your population. So their concern was, once again, the same old problem here, is that Hollister has 35,000 people or so in round numbers. And San Juan Bautista, and this is not prejudicial, it's just a fact, they have 2,000 people or so in round numbers. And they were going to split the vote equally between San Juan Bautista and Hollister, and the folks who lived in Hollister didn't like it. They don't think they're being fairly represented if they're trading with people who only have 2,000 people and are only going to guarantee that much. What was presented here is different, so maybe it has changed. As far as green energy goes, actually, in total, I'm backing it because of energy independence. But the truth is that at the state level, you should know that there's already state mandatories. And by such and such a date, we have to have so much green energy. I can't remember what they are by such and such a date. And although they're going to start by providing more green energy than PG&E, eventually PG&E is going to have to catch up. It won't have any choice because of the state mandates. Everybody's going to be on the you got to have so much by such and such a date. And when that happens, they will all be out there bidding for the same energy, out of the same plant, because there's no provisions. And what they really want from San Benito County, and it's important that you know this, because I got to speed up here, is what they really want is they're going to want to build their solar plants here. And we should realize that, and we should set it up so that we get the appropriate compensation for what they're going to get out of us. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Marty. I'll close public comments. Okay. Final words from our board.
Actually, if I may just really quick address, Marty is correct about the credit guarantee being by population. That was a sticking point for some of the larger counties, so that change was made after the presentation and incorporated into the JPA. Yeah. So you were not incorrect there. And the state is going to mandate that PG&E and everyone else have a certain amount of green at some point. This is still going to be accelerating faster than those requirements. And as far as the last point about our land area, even if we opt out, they can still come to us to build, plants over here, whether we're in the, agreement or not. So I don't think that comes off the table either way.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. All right. We're actually gonna take lunch 10 minutes early. We have Univision is requesting that the board stay here for a couple minutes. They want to take a picture of the whole board collectively and interview some of the board members, if that's acceptable, some of the board members. Okay, so we will break early for lunch. Come back at 1:30.